I broke up with my boyfriend, someone I love, someone I have known for over 10 years, because he didn't stand up to misogynistic young men when he was given the opportunity. We had just finished watching Adolescence, a miniseries on Netflix that essentially talks about how boys are being more and more radicalized online, how parents aren't paying attention, and how it's really up to men to help solve this problem because they're surely not going to listen to us. So we were walking to the farmer's market, and right behind us were two boys, probably 13 or 14 years old, and they were saying things like, Trump is the best, what has he ever done? He has more followers online, I don't get why no one would like him. And I was seething because my 6'4", handsome, white privileged boyfriend wasn't saying anything. And so finally I stop, I turn around and I get right in their face and I said, he's a f***ing rapist. He's a certified f***ing rapist. And they go white in the face. Boyfriend? Still just standing there, not saying anything. Once the boys get their bearings, they say something like, Trump is my daddy. Trump is your daddy. And I was furious. I had a full-blown crash out. I took my full morning latte and I smashed it on the ground and I grunted and yelled and walked away. And he's like, what's the matter? You're the matter. Not even the boys so much. Him, because he had an opportunity to stand up against misogyny and he fucking didn't.
Holy shit. Bro dodged an absolute bullet. Oh my god. What do you mean? You claim you love this person, have known your boyfriend for a decade, and yet you dumped him over one social interaction where you didn't like the way he handled it. You know that's insane, right? Like, that's the kind of thing a loving relationship you would potentially work through, talk about, be like, hey, I didn't like the way you handled this. Can we discuss how maybe in the future you could do this? But no, yeah, just crash out and dump your boyfriend for no reason. Now, in this case, I support it because he needs to get as far away from you as possible. And potentially also, like, we need a restraining order keeping this person away from kids because it is absolutely insane for a grown-ass adult to crash out on random young boys because they said they like the president of the United States. Like, people are allowed to have different opinions than you. They're allowed to support candidates you don't like, and freaking out on children in public and going like rage mode is not a healthy or normal way to react to simply people expressing an opinion that like half the country believes. So also, I mean, this whole he's a thing, that is not some like objective, neutral, verified fact. That is an allegation that has been made that some people believe and some people do not believe. So it's not as if they all agree, yeah, he is, and we don't care. Like, you're clearly grappling with a straw man there. They don't believe that. Now, we could discuss whether they should, but again, having a full-blown crash out, throwing your drink into the ground and losing your crap over something teenagers said is insane to me. I mean, listen, this hasn't happened to me, but say that I was like walking with my boyfriend and some 13-year-old boys like yelled slurs at us or yelled something, I would just keep it moving. I would roll my eyes at them and keep it moving because as an adult, like and to be clear, these kids did nothing like that. Like, they didn't even do anything wrong, really. They're just talking amongst themselves and saying their opinion. But even if literal kids did do something wrong or something upsetting or something offensive, a grown adult should not crash out like this over the words of teenagers. Like, everything about that gives mentally unstable, gives mentally ill, gives I lack the resilience of a functioning adult. It really is clinical levels of derangement we're seeing here. And it's so funny to me because her boyfriend just acted normal. Like he just reacted to this situation how a normal person would react, and you dumped him for it. But again, I support it because bro absolutely dodged a bullet. He absolutely did. Now, while we are on the topic of crazy woke white ladies, let's listen to this bizarre video from another one from this interesting demographic. Take a listen to this.
You know why people of color are more educated than white people? Because people of color are the ones who have been affected most by the government. So it only makes sense that they would educate themselves. Therefore, it makes sense that white people are the most uneducated people out of everyone. Because we've been least affected by shit. So why would we look into the history of the government when it didn't affect us? We're always safe, aren't we? The answer is no to that question, by the way. We're not safe. Educate yourself. Because it is white privilege when you remain uneducated because the shit doesn't affect you directly. And that is a fact.
Oh my God. Please don't tell me to educate myself when you can't even change the batteries in your smoke detector. That is driving me, that noise drives me insane when it's in the background of videos. Oh my goodness. I'm literally crashing out because of that. I'm going to throw my latte on the ground. No, I'm actually not. But I don't know how to engage with this because this is just literally not true. Like by any statistical measure of educational attainment or like other things, white people are not the least educated demographic. It's just not true. You're just in fantasy land. And if you're just ascribing some like vague notion about how awake to the government they are, that's not really measurable or testable. So how we could prove that one way or another, I don't know. But I just really hate this weird collectivization that happens in this rhetoric that you hear from these woke people. Like, you should not be looking at the world this way, where it's all just like white people this, black people this. Actually, everyone's an individual, and some white people are very educated and very informed, and some white people are deeply ignorant and foolish, and some black people are extremely educated and informed, and some black people have no idea about anything and are totally ignorant. Like, this is these categorical group statements and declarations are not just useless, but are inherently flattening to the reality of the world we live in. And this whole thing about like, well, the government affects white people less. I'm not even sure that's true at a broad level, but it's absolutely not true about any individual. There may be a white person who's been deeply harmed by a specific government policy, and then a black person over here who's never had an issue in their life with anything. So it's just like a totally useless and broken framework for analyzing things, in my view. Not to say there's never a way to discuss race or that these things don't impact our lives in any way. Of course, I'm not saying that, but to do it like this is just so reductive. And then the whole thing, I mean, it comes off, I just can't listen to anything you're saying when the smoke detector is beeping in the background like that. Like, I'm still not over that, bro. I'm not. I'll play you one final video. Discussing white culture. Let's take a listen.
So you're telling me we're not allowed to study whiteness and what white culture is because it's simply just passive aggression, gaslighting, narcissism, not taking accountability for your inventions like racism, but then taking accountability of other people's inventions like the cell phone. And then totally ignoring the fact that y'all were too lazy to be racist in the first place. You weren't even racist. You were just lazy. And then you became racist after we all discovered how lazy you were, and then we got our rights. You created racism to justify your own laziness. You weren't even racist during slavery. You were just a piece of shit. No, wait, but I promise you guys, it's not that deep. It's seriously not that deep. Like, don't think about it that hard.
What the actual heck did I just watch? These people are really, really not okay. They're just not okay. I mean, I will say this. I actually find it concerning how much like pretty explicit anti-white racism there is on the internet, particularly social media and particularly like TikTok. There really is this just open hatred for whiteness and white culture and white people. And I don't really think that's a healthy way to look at the world. Like, I think any white person you meet, you should treat them as an individual and not make assumptions that they're aggressive or passive aggressive because of some sort of collective impression you have of the whites, which is not even really like a meaningful category that you could decide who's in it and who is not in it when you really get down to it. Camille Foster has actually talked about this. He's a writer and a journalist. The racial groups are not actually as clear and unambiguous as many people think. But regardless, the same way that it would be wrong to make some sort of generalization about black culture and then meet a black person and make a bunch of assumptions about them, yeah, you shouldn't really be doing that to white people either, especially when those assumptions are like insane and baseless. What do you mean white people invented racism? That is not true. Racism and basically all forms of in-group, out-group bias are kind of an inherent aspect of human nature. That tribalism that I think was a survival impulse and perhaps evolutionarily developed, but is one that, because we're thinking people with reason and rationality, or at least some of us are, we're able to overcome with those critical thinking skills and realize that it's actually not like that anymore, and doesn't have to be. And thankfully, we can all treat each other as individuals and get along, and not necessarily devolve into our tribes or whatever. But people like this really do sound like they sound very similar to the alt-right, white nationalists, racists. The way they talk about black people is the same way that people like this talk about white people. And I think it's all awful. I think it's all grotesque. And I think it's all just dividing our country and pitting people against each other in the worst way imaginable. But other than that, she's doing amazing. What do you guys think of all these crazy TikTok videos? Let me know which one of these was your favorite. Least favorite? I'm not sure. Let me know in the comments. Hit that like button while you're at it. Make sure you're subscribed. Remember to check out the podcast wherever you get your podcasts, and we'll talk again real soon.